I think I need that. Still turns. Perfect. Sweet. Let's see what we can do with this old thing. Well, as you saw, I picked this thing up on the side of the road, just kind of chilling. Had a free sign on it, so obviously it wasn't something somebody wanted. And I can kind of see why. I mean, it's missing the pull cord. That tire is flat. It has no gas tank. That air pressure gauge is all destroyed. I don't know if the compressor has any compression left in it. It does look like the oil for the compressor is all gone. I did turn it over, and it does turn here, and it's still connected to the compressor, and the compressor pulley is turning too. I feel some compression, and I can kind of hear some. So it looks like we have a Hitachi EC 2510 something. Fuel tank is basically 0.95 of a gallon, basically 1 gallon. Max tank pressure 145 psi, 8-gallon capacity for air. 10.9 CFM at 40, 9.3 CFM at 90. This will be your pressure regulator. That's going to be probably line pressure, and that one will probably be tank pressure. 2 outlets for running whatever. When I was unloading it, one of these rubber feet, the bolt literally just broke right off, so it's fine. I still have the rubber, I can replace it. This one actually looks a little loose too. So this is a Honda GX160. Great, absolutely great motors. I have quite a few of them, and I have a couple that have blown up over the years, and I've kept parts from them. I believe I even have a brand new gas tank that I bought for another project and never used it, so we might be in luck here. I know I've got a pull cord somewhere. Might even literally be from a GX160. I'll have to dig and look. That choke feels kind of tight. That'd be our throttle, fuel on and off. It's got a leak in that general area. It's got a leak in that general area. It's got a leak in that general area. So it leaks a lot. I'm okay with that. I don't really have any issues with that. One thing you might be thinking is maybe we should start by pressure washing this. And that's not a bad thought, really. But I don't like starting with pressure washing because of the fact that you don't always have a chance to really diagnose where the leaks are coming from. And if you can't figure out where they're coming from, then obviously you can't fix them. So something like this is probably simple enough that you really could pressure wash it and still find the leaks and it not be too big of a deal. But as much as I want to pressure wash it right now, I'm gonna leave it. We're gonna start stripping some things off of it. Check for spark, you know, throw something in the spark plug hole, see if it fires off. To check for oil. This could be really useful. I've been wanting a little mobile compressor that was gas powered. I've got plenty of electric ones, but a gas powered one is something that'd be nice to have on recoveries to take out in the field and really get some big tires aired up, or you know, work on a machine out in the field with air. So let me go dig and see what I can find for a pull cord and possibly a tank. I don't know, maybe I've got something for a wheel here that we could make better, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I went shopping. I have this fuel tank. I do have a pull recoil, pull cord, and I had bought this tank to replace this tank on a different machine. Well, this machine ended up just, you know, the motor got grenaded, and so I never put this on. So that's awesome. It happens to have at least this bolt here. And I already stuck the nuts onto that. So I've got the hardware for it. Then I found this solid wheel. I have no idea what it goes to, as well as I found I had a tube And these are a couple older tubes. I'm not sure if they're any good. And then this is another tire and actual rubber, you know, plastic wheel. Probably leaning toward going with this wheel just because it's flat free and it's about the same diameter of what's on it. Let's start by putting that pull cord on, and we'll see if we even have spark, have compression, and we'll go from there. Would you check that out? They even put the hardware back in. Why would you do that? If you're gonna steal the pull cord, take the hardware. I can feel compression. It's our air cleaner. It's dirty, but it's not ridiculously bad. All right, let's pull the spark plug. Is that loose? Spark plug is loose. Huh, that leads me to believe somebody was messing with this before they gave up. It's even wet in there. Yeah, that leads me to believe they literally worked on this like right before they put it at the curb. I just wonder what we're gonna find now. Well, let's check for spark. When you check spark on one of these, make sure you flip this to on. If you don't flip that to on, you'll get no spark and you'll think you don't have any spark and you have a problem with the coil, but on. You look right there. Yeah, we've got good spark. All right. Well, do we put some more stuff down their throat? Might blow that plug out. Getting stuff out of that. I think it's oil. Not sure why there would be oil in there unless we have a major problem. Let's check for oil in the engine. There's a little plug here. Sometimes there's one on the other side. Oh my, it's got a lot. Or maybe we're tipped. Are we tipped? Yep, we were tipped. So I need to get that rubber pad back on this. But it's pretty black for a gasoline. Doesn't smell bad. So this is what I was talking about, tipped. Because that one rubber foot came off, it was wanting to tip the engine that way, which is how you drain the oil out of it. There's a plug here and a corresponding one on this other side. Both are oil. We find a little bolt, we can stick that rubber foot back on. Try that wheel real quick. This thing does not want to roll. The one nice thing about this thing leaking so much oil is that everything seems to be well lubricated. Well, that doesn't fit in there, but this bolt should work. Maybe some washers? Let's find some washers. I'd prefer not to use my ones that are all organized for this, because I just don't care. So we'll dig through here. I spend a lot of time organizing hardware. I buy it used a lot of times, or some guy has a garage full of it, and I will buy everything. Then I organize it, and I organize it, and I organize it, so that when I need it, I have my own hardware store completely full of everything that I could possibly need, which is not necessarily true. I don't have everything, but it keeps me from having to leave a lot. And this entire row, all these cabinets are completely full of organized hardware and miscellaneous things I'm going to need on projects. And this is just at the cave. At my other shop, I have the same thing too. So it's looks like a lot of money spent here. I get it very cheap, but I spent a lot of time organizing it so I know where it is so I can have it for when I need it next. Hence, all these washers. Let's take these. We'll see if we have enough. There we go. Almost no place side to side. Perfect. Get these nuts put back on. And then we'll have at least a roller. It barely touches when it's on its rubber. Then you tip it up and you can move it like a wheelbarrow. Cool. I'm going to spray some brake cleaner down the cylinder just to try and get whatever oil's in there out. Take a rag again. Now we're just going to give it a little spritz of this in there. Put the plug back in. See if it fires off. Alright, what do you think the chances are? Is it going to fire right up? Or are we going to get any sputter at all? I think it'll fire. We'll see. Nada. Let's try some two-stroke gas. A little mixed gas here. Probably way more than I need. Probably instantly fell the plug. Oh well. All right, round two. I think what we're going to do is we're going to put a socket on the crank. Turn it over that way. I need a corded drill. It's trying to fire. All right, trying to get all the junk cleared out of that cylinder there. So I'm suspicious about compression. I'm wondering if we actually have any. We're gonna test it. So we've got this adapter should thread right in to the spark plug hole. Well, I can't get that adapter. I'm gonna have to take the valve cover off. Then we'll get this in there. All right, 4 bolts. Now we should be able to get that sleeve in there. Oh wow, that's loose. Oh wow, oh my. So look what I just found. That valve is loose. This one's not even on the valve, and the push rod is stuck. Or no, it's not stuck. Come on. The push rod is we bent a push rod. That's what happened. That's why it wasn't getting any compression. I wonder if that valve is free. And I'll bet maybe this one's loose because that push rod is also bent. Maybe we take these nuts off and we can get into that push rod and find out. Well, that valve's free. Oh, no. I think there might be a slight bend in that one too. What about that valve? Can't tell. Okay, well, I guess I'm not going to check compression at this moment. Probably just going to straighten that. Makes me wonder if it was just run out of oil, got hot, bent a rod, never ran again. All right, I'm going to tap on this valve. Yeah, it's sticky. Oh, it went all the way down and stuck. Wonderful. Yep, the piston's hitting it right now. Just made it past. See if I can get some penetrating oil in there. There we go. It's starting to get a little more free. That valve is definitely free. Put put that rocker back on. Gotta figure out what those need to be tightened down to, because that just seems too loose. There we go. Sure feels like it's got a heck of a lot more compression now that that valve is moving. Well, not moving, it's shut. It's definitely freed up though. I think it just ran out of oil and got hot. Stuck a valve. And then it was running hardcore and bent the push rod. I can straighten it. It's not an oil fed one. It literally is just a solid push rod. There's no oil tube in the middle of it. We can straighten it. I'm just trying to figure out what caused it. And then we'll go from there, because we could just do all that work and then just have this thing bend another rod. So I'm going to run up to the shop and get the rest of the parts that I need. All right, let's go in search of the parts for the GX160. So we're in one of my shipping containers, working on getting this set up and cleaned, but done this stuff. All right, there they are. You know that they're the good parts because it says good parts. So I'm gonna grab that box and we're gonna head back down to the cave. Hi, pups. Bowden. Hi, Scout. No jump. This is Maisie. I don't know if you guys have met Maisie yet. She's one of our newest ones. These are Weimaraners. So she is a silver. So is Bowden here. And Scout is blue. These are my crazy Weims. At least a few of them. All right, here's our box. So this is the remnants of a Honda GX160 that internally grenaded. So the piston, there's a broken connecting rod. I only kept this to be able to show that, plus the piston and the rings might still be good. But, you know, I took every component that I might need. Well, I guess I probably don't need those broken components, and I threw them in this box. So we've got brand new muffler, air intake. There's a good carburetor, probably better than what's on it right now. Yep, see, this is from an old pressure washer that exploded. Here is what we're after. Got the whole crankshaft, timing gear, side cover for the motor, bearings and bolts and everything you need. And this gas tank was bought for this project. And because it always had this dented can, well, when it finally threw a rod through the block, I basically junked it. Took everything that might be useful later. And here we are, it's later. So this is the whole head assembly with the valves in it, spark plugs. So let's open up this cover here. So those are pretty loose. I wonder where the push rods went. Oh, there they are. There's the push rods. So there's our two push rods. They look good. I almost wonder if I should just replace this whole head assembly as one piece. I am tempted to throw this whole head on there. To put the head on, it is literally just remove the carburetor, and then there's 2 bolts down here, 2 bolts up here, and the whole head goes on. You gotta take the exhaust off too. We don't actually have to take it off, or the carburetor. Could leave all that on there. At least we have that in our back pocket. So, got all the pieces for it. I think the plan right now, I'm going to straighten this, and we're going to reassemble it, and then go from there. We always have this available to us. Got pretty good gasket. Definitely looks like it's got plenty of life left. All the bolts. Got, you know, an additional air cleaner if I want. Got an exhaust. I got even a carburetor that's probably in better shape. So let's go ahead and straighten this out, and we'll see if we can get it to run with its original parts. Well, it's looking a lot better. We're going to go with that. We're going to try it, see what happens. Let's put our push rod back in. Go straight in like that. And then push the valve in. There. We're gonna bring this up to top dead center, and we're gonna adjust and check the valve clearance on this. See if it works. Yep. Both the exhaust, that side, intake, that side are moving. All right, so we're gonna crank this engine over until we get piston all the way up. I can see it at the very top right there, and the rockers aren't moving. If I go one more crank, then you see how they're moving. So we'll go back to that other stroke right here. That is all the way up. Rockers aren't moving. All right, so to adjust this, I'm going to loosen this nut. This side is our exhaust. This side's our intake. We want 15 thou on the intake. We want 20 thou on the exhaust. That again. Yep, slight drag. I don't have my bent set of valve or gauges, feeler gauges. There we go. There's our 20 thou. See, they seem a heck of a lot looser than I would think, but I guess that's how they're supposed to be. Well, since our whole goal there was to actually test compression, let's do that now. I bet you we have pretty good compression, assuming the rings are good. So we got about 95 PSI. So I don't know if that's going to be good enough, but I think it'll run on that. Usually you want, I don't know, $120 or more. But we might have some issues where that valve isn't seating real well. And if that's the case, it probably just needs to run to build that back up to get to the point where it's usable. So let's get this out of here, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to try and start it, actually. So probably wouldn't have figured that out as quick had I not had to take this valve cover off in order to try and get this adapter in. If this adapter had screwed right in, I would not have seen that until later on. We would have eventually gotten in there and figured out that was an issue, but right off the bat, we figured that out pretty quick. And there's a lot of other stuff we could have done before trying to dive into the valves. So I'm happy that I've gotten that. We're straight. It's all in there. Everything's moving properly. No idea why it caused that valve to seize up and then obviously the push rod to bend, but let's give it a little gas down the throat. Put the spark plug in. We'll see if it fires. This thing, a little bit of gas. Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic on this. These Hondas are great engines. I've got them on a lot of different machines, and I've used them for a long time. Always been happy with them till a rod goes through the side of a block. But then again, I bought that machine used. Who am I kidding? I buy pretty much all my machines used. See what happens. Yeah, baby. Heck yes. It fired. Sweet. Now I say we dive into the carburetor. Let's figure out if we got any issues there. We'll get this valve cover put back on at some point. I wanna watch it. I wanna watch the valves move once we get it running. There's enough oil in it to go ahead and move forward, but we don't know what the carburetor is going to do for us. Plus, we've got to get a gas tank on it at some point. Oh boy. Man, there's like black tar. Thick black tar right in there. Oh, it's gummy. Man. I think we should probably take that bowl off. Looks like there's some gas in there. Oh, just rust and dirt, debris. Float seems to be doing its thing, floating. I'll shove this in here, try and keep anything from getting into that. It's a direct path right into the engine, so we don't want anything getting in there. Alright, I'm debating on putting this other carburetor on it, just for ease of time and speed. Let's pop the bottom bowl off this one, see how it looks. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, float is moving, the needle works. I mean, see the difference? There's that. And then, see, it's this side, but if I open this up, it's all clean in there. This one is all gummy. See in there, there's all that gunk. Take this gasket off. You see the tar coming out of it. I'm not saying this is not savable. It is. It's a good carb. It's worth rebuilding. But this one, here's what that one looks like inside. So you see there's no buildup. The float is in amazing condition. The needle still moves. So if we, where's the air? Okay, flip it over. So the float and the needle are working. I'm not even gonna mess. I'm gonna make sure we got everything looks identical. The only thing that doesn't look identical is the outlet of this fuel line. All right, here's the new carburetor. See how this fuel inlet kind of comes out straight out sideways? If we put this on here, it's fine in every other way. The only way for me to make that work is for me to drill a hole through this side cover here the fuel line's already kind of going in that direction, and I think it's probably tight enough that it won't hit the flywheel. So I could drill a hole there, and I might, and reroute the fuel line. Instead of up here, it would come down through there, because right now the other end of it is up right there. And so I think we'll leave it there for right now. I'm going to maybe try and clean this carburetor and then see what we can do with that. These are tight. I got to get this gasket off. I need to get a new one. Alright, well, I spent a bunch of time and I cleaned this thing out. I got the choke to work really well. Throttle completely cleared up. And now it is more than clean in there. Blew through all the passages. They're all open. The idle jet's open. The fuel shutoff works. Here's what our bowl looks like inside now. Completely different. This is the float. Cleaned it. Cleaned the needle. We'll get that reinstalled right now. So I went calling around about a rebuild kit for this carburetor, and everybody's like, oh no, we just replaced the whole carb. We just replaced the whole carb. Or I can order it. But I didn't want to order it. I wanted it today. And I didn't want a replacement carburetor. These carburetors are better than any other carburetors you can buy today. The stuff made in China is not the stuff made in Japan. So I know it's so much easier to just throw a new carb on it, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to have problems with that in the future. This carburetor is leaps and bounds better than that $28, $30 carburetor you can find online. Yeah, sure, it's a little bit less work, and you don't have to have quite the knowledge in regards to these to be able to throw a carburetor on compared to clean it, but it's not that hard to clean it. There are videos all over the internet showing every detail of this carburetor and how to take care of it, rebuild it, etc. If you can save the old carburetor, if we can save this carburetor, you can save yours. This thing was nasty, but I think we're good. Let's try the... Okay, now flip it over. Oop, well, I gotta put this back on. Otherwise, it won't seal. I accidentally had the float upside down, so I had the needle facing the wrong way. Let's try it now. All right. Totally sealed up. Open. Totally sealed up. Awesome. All right, let's get this back on. All right, here's that tank that I bought for another project that is going to work perfect here. I'm going to get a different piece of fuel line. This one's got a crack in it on this end, and it's just has shrunk up a little bit, I think. Lots of compression. All right, before we start it up, probably ought to put some oil in the compressor. So we've got air compressor oil. No idea how much this takes. No idea if this bottle is going to be enough. There we go. Now we're getting on the sight glass. We're going to go about halfway up. Usually that's the way it works. Let's get some gas in there. Oh, come on, not all over it. Well, that just made a mess. All right, there's two drains I'm going to remove of each of these tanks, just in case it does start up and run. I would prefer it not build air yet. So those two drains, got those out. Let's move this to the edge. I would like any water to just dump out of it. All right, let's turn the fuel on. Let it on choke. All right, here we go. One pull. It runs. It started right up. And man, I can't say anything bad about it at this point other than a little bit of smoke, but that's to be expected with all the junk and all the oil and grease that's all over it. So I just still don't know what caused that bent rod or the valve to get stuck. Maybe there was some water in it at one point. It seized that valve up, and then somebody tried to start it and it just instantly bent that rod. And then from then forward, it just never ran well. From then forward, it never ran, period. I want to, real quickly, put that valve cover back on, and then we're gonna basically just let it run and not build air yet. And then when I'm ready to build air, we'll put those plugs back in the tanks, and we'll see if it builds air. The way it works is, it's always on full blast until it senses a certain pressure in the tanks. Then it's got this mechanism here that this valve sends pressure through this line, this black line here, to this, that then pushes this forward. And then when it pushes this forward, it lowers the RPM down to idle. And so then when it sees a need for additional RPM, or it sees that the tank pressure is lower than where it's set to be, or it needs to be, it will let this retract back to full RPM, therefore giving you the ability to build air faster. And so that's great. Obviously we still don't know if any of the mechanisms or the compressor works yet, but we know we got the engine running, so that's a huge plus. Let's get that valve cover on, and we'll move on from that spot. So I cleaned the filter up a little bit. It is plenty clean to use, so we're going to use that. Turn that back on. We're going to do no choke. This thing is running amazingly well. It's hardly, I mean, there's almost no smoke. And the smoke is what it's burning off. That's just oil on it. I am absolutely impressed. I did not expect this to be this easy. I mean, granted, it's taken a little bit of work, but incredible. So I think next up, we need to figure out if this makes air. I did feel right where these plugs are, it was making, there was air coming out. So I want to clean up that gauge for the line. And I think over here on the tank, PSI, I might try and find a new gauge for that because obviously it's junk. I robbed this gauge off another compressor. We're going to use it for now. I need to get a new one for it, but I do want to see the tank pressure, not just the line pressure. So it's building pressure now. The tank has about, I don't know, 45 PSI. What is causing that? All right, so when I tried to start it, I took the load off it, I opened up this tank. Listen, hear that? Doesn't sound right. Let's check the valves. I wonder if we re-bent that push rod. We didn't re-bend it, but that one slipped off. And so did our keeper. Glad we didn't lose that. Ah! I had it right here. I decided to use this slippery little rod, and it rolled down into the engine. Got a small magnet I'm trying to reach down in there. I think I got it. Oh yeah, baby, that saved me so much work having to tear that engine open. All right, well, that's the little valve keeper for that. Is that valve bent or stuck? Valve's not stuck. Neither of them. Still straight. That's way too loose. Oh, it loosened up completely. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's actually a good sign. It means I didn't get it tight enough. I'm fine with that. We get the feeler gauges, we're going to reset these. What actually loosened up was the actual rocker stud. So the rocker stud itself wasn't tight. So I got to take off the lock nut, the entire rocker nut, the rocker itself, and there's our stud. That loosened up, and I had it right, but you can have it right, and if that stud's moving, it won't matter. So because that happened to that one, I'm going to go ahead and take this one off as well and make sure it's correct, because I don't want this to happen again. Let me go get, I think it's like a 12 mil. We'll get those tightened, and then we can get the rockers back on. All right, it's all back together. Only problem is I broke one of these drains for the tank, so I'm not going to be able to give it full pressure, but I want to see if it starts. Fuel is on. That's on. See if it starts. I just ran the carburetor out of gas, that's why it died. Maisie, come. Good girl. Come here. Good girl. Hi, sweetie. What do you think, huh? Good girl. So what I'm working on is, on the bottom of these two tanks, there are drains. And they look like this. And it should have had like a little quarter turn valve, but it's broken. They're jammed with dirt, debris, rock, you name it. This is what it looked like. Well, one of them broke right there. And I rarely have good luck with these easy outs, but usually I have better luck when it's like brass on steel or something like that. But I was able to use an easy out and get the chunk that was in the tank out. So now what we're doing is we're putting in this style drain. So essentially you screw this down to tighten it, and then when you screw it up, it opens, allowing any water to drain out or air out of the tank. These are pretty good. They've got their downfalls. It's what I have right now, and so it's what we're going to put in. I like to use both paste and tape. Usually I always put the tape on first. A friend of mine told me that he always put it on second and then the paste first so that the tape holds the paste. My thought was always that the tape is in there to take up the gap, but then the paste was on the outside to seal it. I don't really know. I bet it doesn't even matter. So we're just going to try his method. I'm always open to doing things a different way. Alright, I want to take off this cage because I want to show you something I might have found. There's our cage. Okay. I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to show this, but right there, the ear of the actual compressor pump itself is cracked. I think. That's probably where a lot of the oil's coming from. You can kind of see it right there. There's some fresh oil, and I think it's coming from the compressor itself. Then there's like a line right here. Shouldn't be there. It's cracked. I think what I'm going to do is pressure wash this off, and then we're going to go potentially pull the pump. Possibly I can just weld it. I know it's probably cast iron, but I just don't care. As long as I can keep oil from leaking out of it, I don't think it really matters. So let's just go ahead and get the pressure washer out. Let's get this thing washed, and then we'll decide what to do. If that is really a crack, we'll be able to tell a little bit better. The other place all the oil is leaking is here at this oil fill and here at this oil dipstick. I cranked both of these plugs tighter. I haven't seen any new oil since. We haven't run it that long though. But I'm thinking a lot of this oil on this side is coming from those two fill and dipstick plugs. cage for the protection has a few broken pieces, so we're going to weld it back together, kind of tack it back, just to make it usable so we don't ruin it. So this here is basically an air bypass so that you can start the engine without the entire compression of building pressure in the tank being put on the gasoline engine. So I just took this out, just kind of looking around, and there's a check ball in here that was stuck. And as you see, it's completely rusted, and it was rusted in place. And if that had stayed that way, it wouldn't have worked. So trying to get the chunks out. Get a little wire wheel in there. There's an O-ring on that. I might replace it, get a new one, but my assumption is there's a little piece in the middle of that. It probably pushes that ball down, and then when you lift this, it allows that ball to come up, and then the air can bypass. So then when you engage this, it pushes that back down, and then that seals, and then it allows you to then start making pressure, I'm assuming. And we got this crazy one over here rolling around on the shop floor. Right, Maisie? What you got there? You good girl. You good girl? Huh? Yeah? Yeah? What do you think? Get it. Get it. Who's a good girl? Alright, so I dug through my stash and I found a ball bearing. This one measures 4.5 or so. This new one is 4.6. I'm not too worried about it. I think this one has lost some of its diameter just due to the rust that is coming off it. So it fits down in there just fine. We're gonna go with it. I'll hang on to the old one just in case I'm wrong. There's our check ball. I did find a new O-ring for that. And so there's some adjustment. I can lock this thing up and down based on how much downforce we need to shut that check ball down or to allow it to come up. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna kind of randomly install it about where I think it was, and then once we have it up and running, I can mess with that and get it dialed in. So this line also is what tells, so once this sees a certain amount of pressure, it sends air pressure all the way up to the throttle, and then that disengages the throttle, basically kicking it down into low idle so that it's not constantly doing full blast. And that's where this line leads to. Since we washed it, here's one of the awesome discoveries I found. That bolt holding the motor has no nut on it. This one's loose. I don't know if you can quite tell, but the belts, the two pulleys are not lined up. So the front one, I think, is cocked just a little bit this way, which makes sense because it's loose. There is a crack right there in the actual housing, the base of the compressor. So I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the compressor. We're going to get the belt off. We're going to get the motor bolted correctly, and we're going to see what's up with that compressor. Yep. that whole case is broken right at the bottom there. So I only have 3 of the bolts out. This one is still in the case. There's our bottom corner. All right, so here's that corner that broke. So there's our piece. Should fit there like that. As you can see, there's a weeping, oil weeping. I think it's literally cracked even further in, right along that bottom corner. Yeah, it is. This thing lived a hard life. Got beat up and abused. So this is an aluminum housing. I guess it could probably be TIG welded back together. Another option we have is this compressor. So this is a very, very nice compressor. This is a Qunicy 2100 RB1. This compressor, man, it's the cat's meow. I got this whole compressor itself from the same place we got all the Willys Jeeps. And I don't really need another electric compressor. My plan actually was to take and put a gas motor on this setup. This compressor is not original to this tank either, right there. Equipped with a Champion compressor unit. But this is a Qunicy compressor. So at some point, the Champion compressor crapped out. The motor was still good, the tank was still good, all of everything else was still good. They went and they bought a replacement pump, and that's what they used. So the thought is to take this and put this on that compressor instead of trying to fix that pump. The only issue is this thing has its own kickdown for PSI built in, and I'm not exactly sure if I can just plug it right on. And this thing makes amazing pressure. It's awesome. This would be a massive upgrade to that compressor. So I'm gonna have to do some looking and measuring, and I'm gonna check out and try and figure out if I can use this unit. And if I can use this unit and I can figure out how to actually get it plumbed in so that it will kick itself down when it's got full pressure, I'm gonna do that. Actually, now that I think about it, I can, because all that other one really has is the compressor air line running from the compressor pump itself to that bypass valve. And in that bypass valve, it has the kickdown. I think I could just bolt this on. Why don't we unbolt it from here and we'll see what it looks like. I got this kind of mocked up here. I moved the motor over slightly, and this is where the compressed air comes out on this compressor. So I took the 90 right from there, and I'm using the same braided line that was on the other one going right down into that valve. And currently I've got the belt from the compressor that was on the other tank. It doesn't quite fit down in there. Try and find another pulley, which I have a lot of pulleys. I just have to find the right size for the shaft for this motor, and one that's going to fit this pattern, this V on this this belt that I have. Now for the cage that we welded back together, there's this mount here, there's a couple mounts on the actual compressor tank, and then there's a bracket here and a bracket here. And I can most likely take the bracket and mount one right there and maybe one off of one of these two bolts to give it the ability to fully mount up. This compressor is significantly heavier weight-wise than that. That is an aluminum body. That's why this whole thing cracked. It's not, I don't know, it's not as sturdy as whatever. This lower section's aluminum. This is probably cast iron here, and I think this head is aluminum. The more I actually kind of look at this thing, if you spin that around, there's almost no compression actually happening anymore. And so since we haven't truly run that compressor up trying to test the tanks yet, I don't really think we're going to end up getting the performance out of this compressor that I will out of this one. I know this thing's good. I've on that other tank, I've run it up to pressure. I've used it, put it through its paces, and then obviously we stuck it where you saw it. So that was always the plan with this. I just didn't know it was going to happen so soon. I didn't know it was going to happen in this way. But hey, you got to roll with it. And that's kind of why I save stuff. That's why I grab stuff outside of the road. Maybe that compressor was bad. They knew that. Maybe the motor wouldn't start. Well, figured that out. That was the bent push rod. Why that bent? Not quite sure yet. I do know that we're getting a leak right here under the valve cover. And so I'm going to have to make a new one or buy one. Other than that, I haven't seen any leaks on the actual gasoline engine anywhere. We still haven't tested the tanks. We still haven't tested the regulator here or any of the connectors. Much less we haven't even tested that valve there. But this thing is turning out to be a really nice unit. It's definitely worth spending a little bit of time. And really, I don't have a whole lot of money into it right now. I have nothing into it right now. The compressor was free. Well, the whole unit was free. The gas engine, the Hitachi unit was free. This compressor and that you saw was given to me by the guy that I got those Willys Jeeps from. All the other miscellaneous things like the new tank, the pull cord, I had that. So I need to get a new pressure gauge for there, a new pressure gauge for here. Beyond that, we're looking really good. This line does have some nicks in the actual steel coating, but I mean, we're going to run it until it doesn't work. This might turn into a salvage something, a Salvage Workshop compressor. Take that off, make some decals up. I don't know. I wish somebody hadn't spray painted that compressor orange. No idea why they did that, but whatever. Not that that really matters. It would look better if it was just straight blue. I know that pump's like $200 or $300 to buy a new one. This pump is way more. It's probably at least $1,200. They could be more. I don't know. I haven't looked one up in a long time, but sure, I could maybe JB weld that even. But my thought is this thing gets used in an environment where it's abused. It gets bounced around. It gets bumped. It gets, you know, taken in and out of the bed of a truck, in and out of the trailer, you name it. And so because of that, I just don't see JB weld working. Probably the way to do it would be to grind that off, TIG weld that closed. I don't know if I want to go through it, especially because I feel like there's not a lot of compression left. We'll probably just strip some stuff off it, like the actual pulley itself, maybe some of these covers, that sight glass, you know, and we'll hang on to those. I'll get those brackets off, but I do think we're going to move forward with that pump. And if anything changes, I guess we'll go from there. But I think we should be pretty good once I find a pulley and a belt and figure that out. So we're gonna jump on that. Right now, Maisie and I are gonna go home, get some food, hang out with my wife and children, and yeah, we'll be back on this very shortly. For you, it's gonna be like, all right, so we're up at the shop. We're gonna look for some gauges. So just got a large assortment of gauges from pretty much all kinds of things. What's that one? That one goes up to 200 psi, so that's probably good. So maybe one more. That one goes to 160 psi, and it has a little 90 on it. That might be useful, because I kind of need one that comes out from the back. So a lot of these are like old machine gauges. And these are more like pressure gauges. Alright, that's probably all I got here. I got one more place I'm gonna look, and then we're gonna go look for a pulley for this belt. Looking for pulleys. So got this crate here, got a crate there, and one behind it full of pulleys. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be in this one if I have one. So let's see if we can get this off the shelf without hurting myself. pulley is the right belt size, but pretty sure that inner is wrong. But I might have different inners for that. That looks more like it. That's an adjustable pulley. You can adjust the width of that where the belt rides. Let's get the calipers real quick. So the most important is really the shaft, and we are 0.9, so basically 1 inch. Pretty sure it was a 3/4 inch shaft. What's this one? That one actually might do it. That's 0.75. That actually might be our money right there. And the diameter of the entire thing, 5.1 inches. I think it's slightly smaller, but that's okay. So 5.7 across. That one's 5.1. 0.75 is the diameter of the shaft. So I think that might be the one right there. It fits beautifully on that belt. Cool. Almost first try. Alright, I've got a puller set up on this pulley. Let's see if we can get it off. Alright, they had this little sleeve to basically space it off so it didn't ever come in contact with the motor. We might end up reusing that. Let's clean up the shaft here and we'll see how well this pulley works. Alright, I'm just going to sand this a little bit. Well, it fits on there beautifully, so the only problem is not having that spacer. Now what I can probably do is just go ahead and put this in the lathe and just cut it down to the exact width that I need back here, and then I know it'll never walk its way in. So it is slightly smaller diameter, but the belt size is right. I'm not overly worried about getting this to its optimal. Maybe you guys can let me know what the ratio of pulleys to, you know, for a motor like this to a compressor we're putting on should be. That would be fine. I probably won't change it because it would cost me money to do that. So I'm going to pull this back off. We're going to clean up the pulley and probably just get right to mounting the compressor. I thought about painting the whole unit. I'm not going to mess. It doesn't matter. Wouldn't be that hard to do it later. Right now I just want to make sure that the tanks are good, make sure the unloader valve works fine, and make sure this works well with the compressor we have. Let's go ahead and get this cleaned up and we'll go from there. Alright, we got the pulley all cleaned up, and the way this works, so this is it's called a taper lock pulley. So you can take out these set screws and this whole center section will come out. And so this is a tapered bore. So is this. This fits that taper perfectly. There's 3 holes. The 2 where the set screws go, and then this one here is how you actually take it apart. So once it tightens down on itself, this little slit closes up some, which is what grabs onto the shaft and keeps it from moving. And with that key in it, it grabs onto the shaft here really, really well. Well, once it's tight and it's in there, it's very hard to bang it out, or you could probably use a puller to get it off. But what they do is you can take out one of these 2 set screws that holds it. You have to loosen both of them to begin with to pull it out. And then you take one, you stick it into this hole, And then this is basically set up to push this back out off the shaft, loosening that up so you can easily pull it off without a puller. Great pulley. They call it a dual duty. It's a 16-15 3/4 inch. So the keyway fits perfectly with our shaft here, but the big problem I'm having with it is if I put it on the normal way, the pulley is too close to the side of the body, and it puts this pulley too close to the side of the body, that I can't put that cage on that protects the belts and the pulleys from, you know, accidentally getting your hand stuck in there, or somebody dropping a tool or an air hose or something in it and messing something up. I want that. I want that protection for this. Don't really need it. There's plenty of compressors out there like this that I've seen that don't have that. But I have it. I would like to make it work for this. This belt and this pulley fit beautifully. Same exact slot on the compressor pulley and the pulley we have on the motor right now. But if I go to tension it, I have to pull it back, way back here. And so that does not allow me the ability to put that cage on. I'll show you. So I repainted it all black after we did all that welding on it. But right there, it's too wide here, and it's too wide right there. Obviously, I could make one side fit. I don't want to have to bend it. I don't want to have to extend it. So the simplest solution is that I buy a new belt. If I buy a new belt, I can move this closer and get it to a point where this will remount onto the side of the machine just like so, protecting the pulleys and the belts. That's two problems I have to deal with. One is that this belt is too long, that's fine. And two is that pulley is too close to the side. And I'll show you what I've got for that. So if we mount it like that, like I showed you, that's definitely not what we want. So my plan is to mount it backwards. Mounting it like this presents its own set of problems. First off, these are two set screws that have to be tightened in. So a normal Allen wrench just doesn't fit in there. I can't get it in there to get it tight. But I can get it pretty much completely flush just with my fingers. So what I did was I took an Allen key, cut it, and now I can reach in there and I can get it tight like that. So I want this pulley flush just like that. That way I can still use this cap that they had holding the other one on. So the other awesome thing is that the key is pretty much exactly the width of this body here. So I want to take this back home on the lathe and turn it down so that it fits between the edge of the shoulder on the crankshaft there and the edge of the actual pulley that we're putting in. All right, now we're completely flush. That is as tight as it's going to get. Now I'm going to take this off real quick. So now we'll take one of the two bolts, we'll put it in that third hole. You don't leave anything in that hole because you want this pulley to be balanced correctly. So right now, I can't pull it off. It doesn't want to move. So now we'll start tightening this into that third hole, and it should start separating the inner from the actual outer pulley section. There. Just like so. We'll just go ahead and put this back in here for now. Let's just slip this on backwards. I took the key out. I want to see if this spacer is going to interfere with any of that. And it doesn't. So I can still reach in there, tighten those. I can still get at the hole to loosen it up, and I can still get at that side too. Let me put the key back in, and then we're going to measure how much we need to take off in the lathe. Right about there. Can't get the front end of the caliper close enough to actually measure, so we're going to line these up by eye. So 0.75. 3/4 of an inch. What are we now? We're at 1.1 inch, and we need to go to 0.75. So we need to take off that much of it. Right at that line. We'll keep this chunk here. Put our chunk in the lathe. We are 0.76. So let's go ahead and just take a little bit more off. We're going to call that good. 0.752 works for me. There we go. That's what we removed. Did a little chamfer, did a little deburring on that edge. Should work how we want it. If you missed the video on this lathe, you should definitely check it out. This thing had some semi-major issues, including a motor. The electric motor was just trashed. So if you missed it, go check it out. It's a really good video getting this thing up and running. Really nice to have it, be able to walk up to it, even for something as simple as this. Yeah, I probably could have done that with an angle grinder. I mean, I've done it before. But now that I have the lathe up and running and usable, why not do it right? I mean, not that an angle grinder is not right, trust me. But this is more accurate, more professional, and I get to use my toy. So, yeah, win-win. Go check that video out if you haven't already seen it. Here's our spacer. Put that on. Put the key on. Beautiful. The spacer keeps it from going that way. And then we are basically perfectly flush. We can still get this on there. And then we can lock this by tightening these in. All right, I'm gonna get those tightened in. Another thing that has shown up is that right here, right along this valve cover, we have a leak. I don't have a replacement gasket, so we're going to make one really quick. I'm making all kinds of compression now, and these valves seem to be working the way they should. We just need to get that to go away. So normally I'd want to like tap this out, but I can't do that on this surface in its current location. We might try and reuse this old gasket to help us lay one out. I also might trace around this and actually cut it out. Let's just go ahead and put this right there. This is why I like tapping them, because man, you can be so much more precise. here we go. I'll drill some holes in the four corners. Should be good enough for me. There's our new gasket. That breather slipped on. All right. Hopefully that seals up. Let's just do a cold start on this engine and just make sure that gasket doesn't leak. Fuel on. Choke on. Come on now. So that thing does not smoke at all. I am absolutely impressed. Yeah, that's too hot to touch. We don't have any drips. Sweet. Sealed that leak up. On to the next one. All right, I want to have a go at getting this paint off, this orange paint. So I started a little bit, put some acetone on a rag, and it started coming right off. See that? So that's definitely spray paint, and the blue is definitely probably powder coating. It really doesn't matter, obviously, the orange paint, but it'll look so much nicer if it's just blue. Check it out. After a little bit of cleaning, I just basically used acetone, and it took all that orange paint right off. I took off the safety stickers because, well, who needs those really? Totally pumped. That thing looks so much nicer, doesn't it? So I dug through. I've got a ton of old belts, and I really should throw them away because they're junk, but I want to see if I can find one that will be slightly shorter than the original one, and then we can use that as a template to go buy another one. So this one I think is the same diameter or same thickness, because the goal is to get this pump closer to the motor, kind of like that. So let's check our guard. I think it slightly needs to move. Worst case, we can always cut out one of these bars because the pulley is almost hitting that there, and we're going to have to tension it by bringing it tighter this way. But it's going to be in pretty much that region. Pretty dang good. Looks to me like that might be the size belt we need. They wrote 1.9 on it right there. Hi, Maverick. This is Maverick. He's with me today. Hanging out. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hi. You good boy. You good boy. You can't lay in my lap. You're getting too big. I know. If you don't know anything about Weimaraners, they are amazing dogs. That all they truly want throughout their life is to please their owners. That's it. They're crazy. They have tons of energy. But if you exercise them well and you get them tons of love and attention, best dogs in the world. Right, buddy? Good boy. What do you think? Think this is the belt? Huh? Matt? You think this is the one? Yeah? Yeah? We'll go with that, huh? All right, so we're going to try and get this thing up and working with this belt. And if it proves to work, we'll get a new one. But for right now, it doesn't matter. So let's get this kind of lined up and tight. Right in that region. And we're going to mark the corners. Sometimes if you don't quite get the punch centered, you can angle the punch slightly and kind of towards the direction you need to get it, like I just did, and get it to the middle. Now we're right in the middle. I need a sharper drill bit. I'm gonna finish this hole and then we'll get one. Let's go grab a better drill bit. Well, I either have to get smaller bolts or make the holes in the bottom of the compressor bigger. I think I'm going to do that. So on this corner, I had to grind a little bit out of the washer to make it clear. All the others fit just fine. I'm putting a washer on the top and the bottom, and we're using nylon lock nuts. Hopefully that's tight enough. That will allow me to install this gauge, which wouldn't fit before. Perfect. So, quite a long time ago, I restored an old compressor, a Sailor Beal compressor in my shop. It was way before I was talking on the channel. And a company called Pacific Air Compressors was generous enough to give me all of the parts I needed to rebuild that compressor. Well, they also gave me parts to rebuild another compressor, which I haven't done yet, but absolutely awesome people to work with. This gauge here is from that, because I don't know when I'm going to get to that other compressor. I'm going to go ahead and install it here. This will be the tank pressure, but I've got some air compressor oil from them, a couple other things that we'll be using on this one. But if you need anything for air compressors, go to their website, pacificaircompressors.com, or call them. They can literally find you probably anything you need or anything you want. Really, really good company. I haven't talked to them since that, so it's probably been a few years. They have no idea I'm promoting them, but I really did have a great experience with them. So if you need stuff for your air compressor project, consider them. You know, when it comes to projects like this, you know, I found this on the side of the road. I'm kind of fixing things as I go. A lot of people have the assumption that I have training in this. I didn't go to school for this. I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't have somebody teach me how to fix things. I didn't grow up with a dad that worked in the garage all the time, or a grandpa, or anybody close to me. I literally just have a mentality that there's absolutely nothing I can't do. And I strongly believe that anybody can have that mentality as long as you allow yourself to. You would be amazed at what you're capable of if you just tell yourself that you're capable of it. And if you're not afraid to fail, you're not afraid to mess up, those are very, very important things to get past. You will fail. Absolutely fail. You will not do it right. But if you wait until you have everything figured out and you know how to do it, you will never do it. That time will never come. If you plan, prepare, or always wanted to do something, always, oh, I can't do that, well, then you can't. Next time you're on the side of the road and you see a broken down lawnmower or something, pick it up. If it's free, grab it. Why not? Or any other piece of equipment, or an old turntable, or an old radio, anything that you're into that you like that's broken or free, get it. Take it apart, mess with it. What is the worst that could happen? I mean, you could break it. Well, it was already going in the trash anyway. But you could also fix it. And then you'd have a usable whatever and gain the experience and the confidence in yourself to realize that maybe I can do something else. And you build on that ability to take on challenges, to attempt to fix things that challenge your possibilities or your mind in a way that allows you to grow and grow and grow. And so a lot of the challenges you see, especially with some of the bigger equipment and things, it's like, I didn't go to school for that. I am not a mechanic. I have no training in it at all. I bought some tools and I told myself that I could. And you can do the very same thing. You just have to want it. You just have to be willing to try, and you have to be willing to fail. If you can do those things, you can do anything at all. And it doesn't have to be just fixing equipment. It can be absolutely anything you want in life. Become wealthy, be really good at driving, be, I don't know, you name it. Pick up a hobby, go hunting, you name it. There's so many opportunities and things you can do if you just allow yourself to. But if you tell yourself that you can't, you won't be able to. So I challenge you to look at the things in your life that you want to do and really tell yourself that you can do it. And then try. Give it a shot, because all you're wasting is time. All you're wasting is mental stress, anxiety. It is a complete waste of your abilities, especially if you tell yourself that you can't do it. So I challenge you to change the way you think. Go out there, find something that you really want to do, and do it. Doesn't matter if you do it perfect. You don't need to be a gold medal winner at whatever, the shot put. But if you want to throw the shot put, pick up a big steel ball and throw it. Or whatever. You put in the desire that you want into that sentence and allow yourself to give it a shot. You'd be amazed at what you can do. So, let's keep going. We are a little low on compressor oil. So we're going to fill it up like this, because it's kind of hard to get in there. So we are literally right at the bottom of the stick. Let's see if this makes a big difference. Plan is to change it and the oil in the motor once we know everything is the way we want it. So at this moment, I just want to get it high enough that it's not going to cause any harm to the compressor pump itself. Like, we are almost half. I'm going to do one more of those and should be good to go. As you can see, we're right below that top line, but we are in the operating range, which is between those two lines. So I'm going to go with that. That'll be good enough to run it. All right, let's do a cold start on it. See if everything runs the way it should. Fuel on, choke it, on. Flip that. All right, a little bit of an issue. This thing is currently pressurized at 175 psi, which is way above where it should be. This should have already kicked down into idle. Yeah, this gauge is only reading like 25 psi, where this one is at 175 psi. I believe that this tank feeds that gauge because there's a little 90 here that goes to a hose that goes to this regulator. And in that block with the regulator is the gauge and the two connectors for air tools. So this tank apparently has 175. Is that in PSI? Oh, no, wait. Wait a second. Actually, that might be wrong. I'm looking at KPA, not PSI. This gauge doesn't go high enough for us. That makes a lot more sense. This gauge is going to tell me the regulated pressure coming off of this here. So we need to change that gauge to one that can get to the proper number. And then I'm betting this gauge over here is right. So yeah, okay, well that's good to know. Well, that is definitely not 175 psi coming out of there. I've emptied many a compressor tank. That was absolutely not at that pressure. So I've got this other older gauge. This goes to 160 psi. This thing is only rated for 140 some. So hopefully the kickdown mechanism works and it puts it down into idle and stops building pressure, but we'll find out. That's really what I'm trying to find out here. I'm also trying to find out if it's building pressure fast enough because of the pulley sizes, the pulley on the motor here and the smaller pulley on the pump. I want to figure out if it's actually going to operate the way we want and as quickly as we want. Well, our glass just cracked, so that's great. Oy, always something. I think maybe something has to do with this unloader. There's an unloader valve on this so that when the electric motor that was running it previous to this was able to just bypass. It worked on the electric motor, so I'm wondering if there's something I have to change or eliminate. Maybe even this whole valve is eliminated and I just cap that. Looks like we do still have a valve cover leak, so my gasket did not fix it. Wonderful. Our oil level still looks good on the gas engine. All right, I'm going to do some thinking, try and figure out what I'm missing here. I think it's this. All right, it's time to take Hitachi off this. This is no longer made by Hitachi. I think it looks much better. All right, so I got to wondering about this pump. I want to figure out if it's the issue. What I'm having happen is the compressor on that other tank setup is not building pressure past like 35 to 40 psi. And I already have run this on this tank with this electric motor previous to today. And I'm pretty sure it gets up to around 125 to 150 psi and then it cuts out. And so I just want to verify that the pump is not bad and that it's either our valve over there or the motor itself isn't getting high enough RPM or something's blocked somewhere. I don't know. So I've got this hooked back up, mounted back to this tank, connected with the belt here and wired up. So we're gonna plug it in and turn it on and see what it does. Seems to run fine. It's quiet. Feel air sucking in through the filter. Well, that took about 6 minutes to fill from 0 to 125, just above 125 psi of air pressure. So obviously that's not fast, but maybe that's normal for this Qunicy pump. I do know that this here, the oil, this is an oil pressure gauge, not an air gauge. So it tells the oil pressure inside the actual case there, because this is a hydraulic oil, basically a hydraulic unloader valve. So if there was a line running from here to somewhere else at a certain psi, this pressure would send pressure up to these valves here, bypassing them, allowing the electric motor to keep running, but the motor or the compressor itself will stop building pressure until it sees a drop to a certain psi, and then this will lose its air pressure, those will close, and psi will start to build again. Pressure will start to build again. It's not currently hooked up to anything. You have to have this line run down to wherever the air is being sent, essentially the receiving location, which is normally a tank. We don't need it right now. It doesn't need it on this setup because it has basically the electric switch there is what turns the compressor on and off, but it turns on the whole motor and compressor. I'm not too worried about any of that. I am happy to see that we're at 125 psi and it builds pressure the way I thought it did. I mean, I remember I tried this before we even pulled the pump off. I didn't show it on camera because it was a while back, but I know the pump is good. So that leads me back to the tanks and the valves on the tank, because even if I let it run for 10, 20, 30 minutes, it doesn't build pressure. It stops. And so something's going on where it's bypassing somewhere. So I've got the line that would have gone to the compressor from the pump capped here. I want to leave everything installed, and we're going to install this. I made this a long time ago. It basically, you can adapt it to whatever. I put just a quick connect for going in there. It's got a gauge here, and then a valve stem here that we can put air in through. So we're going to hook that up there. We're going to pressurize the tank and see if we find any leaks, or I want to be able to get it up to at least 100, 125. So we'll start by giving it some air. So that's 40. I hear something. That's leaking right there. This hose is leaking right here. All right. That's a leak I wasn't expecting. So is that one. Oh my, look at that. Wow. Well, that would do it. There is a ton of air loss there. We got air loss there. And then there's a flexible line here that goes to the regulator over there that is really in very poor condition. Check out those bubbles. Wow. I don't even think a bubble machine could do that good. That's awesome. Well, I bet you we are losing a ton of air through that. Cool. Well, that's a good thing to find. Why don't we, I don't have another hose like that. Let me see what I can rig up. All right, I got the tank up to 120 PSI. We're pouring out air bubbles there, pouring out air here, and I've had to mess with that unloader valve there to be able to get it to work right and not blow off. It was blowing off at about 80. Well, I guess no thread sealant on that would do it. So I'm going to pull the rest of this flexible line out and we're going to replace it. All right, I just went ahead and pulled this out. I wanted to reseal all of these. This is where the pressure gauge goes, and these are the two quick connects. And I wanted to take a look at this to make sure that it wasn't leaking anywhere. This is the hose that I want to replace. And I couldn't even get the hose clamp off because of the way it was oriented. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right, I took this plug out and I'm just going to kind of look down in the tank, make sure it doesn't look ridiculously bad. I do see some surface rust, but it looks very minimal. Mostly toward the bottom. There's kind of a shot all the way through. I don't have my other camera. This one only has a lens on the very end of it, right here. And so I've got another one that's got 3 lenses on it, one on each side and one on the end. A friend of mine borrowed that, but all we really wanted to check there, I wanted to make sure I didn't see anything massive particles. This is not going to really give us a good health check on the tank anyway. I'm not too worried about it. This is in great condition. Sure, it's missing some paint in a few spots. Maybe we'll touch that up, but I'm not worried about this being a dangerous tank setup. But I figured I'd show you inside since I already had it open. Got a new chunk of airline run to the actual regulator. And then this goes here. New hose clamp. Larger diameter hose on the inside, and I got a larger hose bib. Basically, that plug there was with the original one. We went up to a larger one to fit that hose. It's just what I had. No reason. So I added a 90, a different one with a little bit of an extension in there to get onto that manifold there. And this was loose before, and all that was holding it was this plastic basically nut, but I put a washer behind this and I was able to get it tight enough that now it's holding that whole manifold extremely tight. These, I think, were also kind of holding it, but they were not tight. I don't even have this tight. I forgot to tighten it, but I'll get that tight, and now this won't go anywhere. So the reason I added a little extension in a 90 was I cracked this gauge because as it tightened down, it contacted the edge there. With this, it brings it out like maybe a 1/4 inch further. I dug through, found another gauge. It's not cracked. So we're going to go with this one. And then we'll get the compressor on and we'll see what we find out. I bought a shorter belt. So the other belt was a 54 inch, I think, and this is a 50 inch. Fits better in the pulley here, but it also brings it tighter. So I had the gas engine moved all the way that way, and the compressor itself has no room for adjustment just because of the fact that they're just holes, not slots, like the gas engine has. There's a slot there, but we're not using that slot. That was the previous one. So this shorter belt should tighten us up a bit. So I don't have any of the bolts on the compressor tightened down yet. Yeah, that's a lot better. Especially once I get it tight and it's lined up beautifully. Alright, so I don't have the proper replacement hose, but I do have this chunk of hydraulic line. Nice thing is that this side has the same pipe fitting as the compressor. And then I can cut it and we'll hose clamp it onto that. I was going to use the 90 like you saw me cut, but I kind of nicked it a little bit, and really the straight is going to work better anyway. So I cut that one, cut off all the old hose. So we'll slip that on there, we'll hose clamp it on, and for now it's going to be fine. Again, I don't want to spend any more money on this. I literally haven't spent any money on this except for that belt. Everything else has been stuff that I had laying around or had here or at the other shop. So I want to make sure this thing is worthy, and I think it is, and then we'll go from there. So let's see if I can make that work. So we need to cut this hose. It'll be better to go a little bit long. I don't know, maybe in that region. All right, well, we got it all back together. Got the cage on. Let's try and start it. Well, there you have it. Check that out. That little thing is running like a top now. Currently, it is building up to about 100 psi of air pressure, and then at about 65 psi, it kicks back on and builds back up. Now, the way to change that is there's an adjustment right here. These don't, I don't know, I've messed with them, and I really have not been able to get it to come up in pressure any. So I think that my pilot valves, or unloader valve, whatever you want to call this, is got some wear in it. I've cleaned it, been through it, and I still cannot get it to go. I want to basically be able to build up to like 125, 130 psi, and then have it kick back on at about 100 psi. This compressor will absolutely be able to keep up with that. It builds pressure amazingly fast. And I think we were losing so much air through all the holes in that air line that went from the compressor to the tank that it just, before, we could never get it to go up to 40 psi. So we fixed that problem. We got basically every connection has been resealed. I've gone through literally just about everything you can possibly go through. And then the actual cage, I was able to make it work with this compressor. Had to do a little modifying to the brackets, but it 100% protects the pulleys from anybody's hands or a tool or one of my dogs getting into it. So I'm happy about that. I really did want that. I've got young kids and a ton of dogs, and I don't really want them getting into this. As you can see on this gauge, we're right at about 100 psi. So yeah, I'm amazed from having basically a stuck valve and a bent push rod on that motor to now look at it. We've got a usable, valuable tool to use here at the shop. I don't know if I quite explained. This is not a PSI gauge. It's not a pressure gauge for air. This is an oil pressure gauge for the actual compressor body itself. And so it just basically pegs itself out. I don't really know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have heard you want to be 20, 25 PSI. I mean, if this is making 50 PSI, I wouldn't know it because it's basically just all the way to the side. Now, at the end of the day, I'm not overly concerned about that because it's making oil pressure. It's keeping everything lubricated. I know that all the passages, including the vent, see this little fitting right there, that little 90 that's open, that is the crankcase vent. I know it's clear. I blew through it and I could hear, I pulled the dipstick and I could hear air in the crankcase coming out of that tube. And then I've pulled this is another unloader valve that we're not currently using. So I could plumb this in and then it would start unloading at a certain PSI. The head here, these two valves would open and bypass pressure. If I can't figure that out or find the right valve, I might hook that up, basically go right to the tank. But the big reason I want this is that it has the ability, this line here runs over, and at a certain PSI, it kicks this thing from high RPM down to low RPM. Basically, it revs it down so that you don't, you know, overtax the system. And then this has a valve here that as you're building pressure, the additional pressure that it doesn't need comes out of that hole right there. Need a couple more things for it. I'm going to change the oil in both the compressor and the motor there. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I definitely see this as a very useful tool. I can't wait to put it to work. Couple more small things. Definitely a process getting this one going. There was a lot wrong with it. Well, there you have it. What do you think? From a literally side of the road find to a completely usable professional pump that we can pretty much take on any recovery, I am pumped to have it. Stoked about this. I've really needed a gas air compressor for a long time. I have a lot of electric ones, but when you're out in the field doing recoveries, the electric doesn't do you a lot of good unless you have a generator or some sort of onboard on the truck air compressor. This will allow me to basically take it to different places and use it for air to blow stuff out, air up brakes, air up tires, you name it. There's all kinds of uses for it. So absolutely ecstatic to have it. The one thing I do think I need to get is a new pilot unloader valve, which is this brass thing right there. I'd like to add maybe 4 hook points to be able to sling it into the bed of a truck or use the crane for something. But other than that, I'm totally pumped to have it, and I'm glad we were able to save it. So I hope you enjoyed the rescue. I hope you enjoyed the process of this completely junk air compressor. From the motor, as bad as it was, to the compressor being junk, all the way to now, where we have it as a usable, absolutely operational compressor. Definitely a fun journey. I really enjoyed this project. I hope you did as well. And as always, I truly appreciate that you've decided to spend your time here at Salvage Workshop. And as always, thank you for watching.